When rioters had breached the Capitol and senators were locked in a secure room for safety, Senator Josh Hawley, who enabled Donald Trump's lies about election fraud, found himself alone in a corner with Republican lawmakers furious with the fact that he had enabled Donald Trump and was the first to raise his hand in the Senate to challenge the electoral votes. Now, here's what we know based on reporting from the Wall Street Journal. One person had spoken to the press saying that it was extremely striking, said a person who was in the room on that chaotic day. For most of the time, he was in a corner of the room by himself with no one talking to him or acknowledging him. In fact, GOP leadership to persuade the 13 Republican, so the GOP was upset with him because he had persuaded, was upset with Hawley because of what he had done with election fraud and how he was enabling Donald Trump's lies. Now, while they were in that secure room, that's what this graphic is about, GOP leadership was trying to persuade Republican lawmakers, Republican senators specifically, who were planning on challenging the electoral votes once they reconvened to certify the Electoral College votes. And so they succeeded in doing that, by the way. Remember, one of the other Republican senators who wanted to challenge the Electoral College votes was Senator Ted Cruz. And through the Wall Street Journal, we learned that Senator Ted Cruz, who like Hawley, had planned to challenge some electoral results, huddled with him and other Senate objectors to see if they could agree on a plan. Hawley ended up being the only senator to press forward, although he didn't insist on further Senate debate. His objection to Pennsylvania's results enabled the House to debate the election results for another 2 hours. So that's part of the reason why we didn't get certification of the Electoral College votes until like 3 in the morning. House members had to debate for another 2 hours as a result of Senator Josh Hawley refusing to drop this ridiculous stunt, which not only enables Donald Trump, but continues to provide fodder for Trump supporters who are convinced that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And so this has actually led to some Republican lawmakers speaking out, I wish a little more aggressively, but at least they're speaking out and attaching their name to what they're saying. Far too often we've seen Republican lawmakers anonymously speak to the press about either Donald Trump or what Republicans have been up to and how abhorrent it is. But in this case, Senator Pat Toomey didn't hold back and decided to go on cable news to call Hawley out specifically. Let's hear what he had to say.
What kind of responsibility do you hold Senators Hawley and Cruz for what happened on Wednesday?
Look, I think what they're gonna have a lot of soul searching to do, and the problem is they were complicit in the big lie, this lie that Donald Trump won the election in a landslide and it was all stolen. They compounded that with this notion that somehow this could all be reversed in the final moments of the congressional proceedings. So that's going to haunt them for a very long time.
I know you are not crazy about what you might consider overreach. Would it be overreach to kick either man out of the Senate?
I think so. I think they're going to pay a very heavy price. What they did was it was technically permissible under the Senate rules. Their voters will decide whether they get another term, and they're both young enough men that I'm sure they would certainly like to do that. So I think it should be left to the voters of their state to decide what their fate is.
Yeah, no, I absolutely disagree with that. 100% disagree with that. We're talking about people who have been brainwashed into believing the lies that have been spread by Donald Trump with the help of people like Josh Hawley. So, let's just wait for the next election isn't good enough for me. And to argue that their part in what motivated the riots in the Capitol will haunt them is such a ridiculous thing to say. No, it won't. No, it won't. The riot happened, and after the riot, Josh Hawley decided to continue with this ridiculous stunt. Nothing haunts him. The only thing that haunts him is his own self-interest and whether or not he's doing enough to advance his own political career.
But the soul searching, Anna, the soul. I guess you have to have a soul to search. That's sort of the nature of it. So it won't be that hard. Just a quick clarification. Didn't Cruz also vote against certifying some of these election results as well? Believe that that's what that senator was referring to right there. I mean, for example, the Houston Chronicle just put out, Ted Cruz's hometown, just put out an editorial statement saying that he should resign. His hometown paper wants him to resign, okay? And absolutely, you're right, there should be consequences, because these people, they've taken down all the mirrors in their homes. There's no like, oh gee, maybe I shouldn't have. No, they are complete political hacks. They're grifters, and they see voters when they see dudes in tactical gear with fisticuffs and like flexi cuffs, like rolling into the Capitol building. Like that is the delusion, and they're along for the ride. They're happy to actually oblige. So no, they have to. I don't care if there are millions of people who believe it was stolen. I know the polls are there. I know that this is a mass right-wing movement. I think no one can downplay that. I know that 75 million people voted for Donald Trump. That doesn't mean that the leadership shouldn't be held accountable, all right? That doesn't mean that we don't deserve better, because people are looking to their leadership. So if Hawley hadn't voted that way, you bet that people would have been like, ooh, yeah, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Maybe it wasn't stolen if not a single senator is saying that it was.
Yeah, and to be clear, you're absolutely right about Ted Cruz in being one of the Republican senators who was willing to challenge the Electoral College votes. Based on what the Wall Street Journal is reporting, after the riots took place and as these Republican lawmakers were in a secure location, Ted Cruz changed his tone because he was persuaded by Republican leadership to do so. But Josh Hawley decided to go forward anyway. But by the way, let me be clear, Ted Cruz should not be cleared of any wrongdoing whatsoever. If he did change his mind in the final hour, that changes nothing, at least for me. He was part of a group of Republican lawmakers who knew full well that there was absolutely no evidence of widespread voter fraud, who knew that the election process went off without a hitch, and he still decided to go along with Donald Trump's lies because he saw it as advantageous for his political career. And I also want to mention Joe Biden, who also believes that Cruz and Hawley should suffer the consequences, during an election. What? We just let it go for 2 years, really? We let it go for 2 years until there's another election. You mean the elections that the Republican Party has worked pretty hard to, destroy for many voters, to disenfranchise voters so they can't, take part in this democratic process. Anyway, Biden's take is absolutely wrong. I agree with Cori Bush. She wants every single Republican lawmaker who engaged in this lie to be booted out of Congress. I think that's the right way to do it. And do I think that's likely to happen? I'm a realistic person, and I'm also a very pessimistic person, and I don't think it's gonna happen, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't. And to just say that this is solely a Donald Trump issue, I think is wrong. We see Republican lawmakers who have enabled the Trumpist tactics and division and hatred in this country, and they should be held accountable as well. Because if they're not held accountable, what does that mean for the future?
Yeah.
If the messaging to them is, you can do whatever you want and there will be no consequences for you. The only consequences you might suffer will be at the ballot box. Not buying it, not buying it. Republican voters, again, after 4 years of absolute devastation under Donald Trump, overwhelmingly supported him in the ballot box. So
it's so unclear what though they want. It's like, I get that
I don't get it.
I get that you think that the election was stolen. I get that you're afraid of socialism, but what are you actually for? Like just a complete authoritarian, militarized state with every black and brown community behind bars. Like, what do you? You're doing a pretty good job of that anyway. But it's very unclear what they're for, which is why I do think that Biden is wrong on this, but that having an agenda that is a universal agenda for all people that can be like, this is my federal jobs program, wishful thinking here, that is really good because it is for something and it's not just like we're going back to normal, because normal is not gonna cut it. I don't know when the moment to say this is, but I'm just gonna say it now, that I think that the Republican Party also needs to be investigated on a funding level, on the amount. Just
the dark money that funded what we saw last week at the Capitol. Okay, how about we take some actual steps in changing the system so that this kind of behavior is a little more difficult to pull off in the future. Yeah, so keep going. I'm sorry.
No. You're absolutely right. The Attorney General of Alabama, Steve Marshall, heads up something called the Rule of Law Defense Fund. That was one of the sponsoring organizations of that Save America rally, which, by the way, if anyone is saying at this point that like, no, we didn't know, it was just a rally. No, you did, because all throughout social media, there was like, well, I've got my crowbar. Oh, I've got my taser. Like, the people were bringing weaponry. They knew that the end game was trying to essentially violently overturn the election results. So all of those, mind you, tax-free, tax-exempt institutions and nonprofits that are constantly funneling, like Anna said, dark money into the Republican Party from the most local level all the way up to the federal government. We got to do something about that. That was something that Obama advisors said that they completely were blindsided by, and that is a large part of why they lost their majorities in the House and the Senate. Was it both? But like they lost their majorities. They didn't see the way that dark money was already funneling into it, and the way that dark money astroturfed the origin of everything we're seeing on, in nowadays, which is the Tea Party movement, which still exists, has gotten a little crazier than just hanging tea bags off of a colonial hat, which was nuts. But it's been weaponized now. Now those tea bags are just guns.
No, you're absolutely right about that. In fact, one of the organizations that helped organize this is the Women for America First organization, which, by the way, is chaired by a former head of the Tea Party movement. And yeah, they received all sorts of dark money in organizing the riots that took place in the Capitol. So just food for thought. I mean, if we're thinking about solutions to prevent this from happening in the future, there are ways to do it without beefing up a surveillance state that is already pretty beefed up. I think it's a problem that this was planned in plain sight on social media platforms like Parler, and that there wasn't any planning to either prevent it or keep it under control so people don't get hurt. There wasn't enough security, clearly, for the Capitol building.
At best, and at worst, it was a deliberate attempt to actually stand down.
That's right.
As we know that supervisors, top officials of the Capitol Police, were saying that they didn't need the National Guard. They didn't need help. And so you left, a single Capitol Police officer to lure away hundreds of rioters by himself.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.